morning, everybody, and welcome to TLC Live as every Wednesday at 11, más o menos. No, estamos empezando a tiempo. I'm
Estamos
Andrea
empezando el
Gomez.
tiempo. Ella es Andrea Gómez, yo soy Orlando Sánchez.
Yeah, lately we're being on time. That's good. No, not a Colombian time.
Yeah, you've been on time.
Not a Colombian time.
I'm always on time.
We're being in the gringo time.
That's right. Very punctual. Military time.
Military time. So today we have two special guests, but the topic today is going to be mental health, something that we're being seeing over and over, not only not only in Texas, but across the country. So far, just in 2023, we've been having around 200 mass shootings. In the last three years, around 600 mass shootings. But mental health is not only has to do with mass shootings. Mental health, we've been seeing an increase on suicides. We've been seeing an increase on people just
Depression,
suicide,
inability to focus, marital breakdown, family breakdown.
exactly.
There's all kinds of consequences.
Something that I don't know if it didn't happen that much before, or we didn't know that much before, because now with the social media and people are more
Well, when you
speaking out
say
about
it didn't happen, what do you mean by it?
that, like depression and mental health issues.
I don't think depression is anything new. I mean, I think depression has always been a condition of humanity. There's all kinds of reasons for depression. I'm not an expert, but I suspect some of it may be genetic, some of it may be, just a low spot in people's lives. I mean, it could be the loss of a loved one, it could be the loss of a job, and those tend to be temporary. People may recover with some professional help, but then there are physiological disorders, which is being bipolar. People would say that's a mental health issue, but that's not emotional. That's a physiology thing that you probably have to seek professional medical help.
Exactly. So that's why we invite today two special guests that they're expert on the topic. And one is Sir Dr. James Dentley.
Sir.
And
Sir.
he's going to explain to us why
Yeah, I'm very
he's the sir.
interested.
Yeah, me too. The third, he's a mental health communication expert. I have the pleasure and the honor to meet via Zoom recently this week, Sir Dr. James Dentley
the third.
the third. So, and he, give us his time today to talk about
All the way from Cook County, Chicago, Illinois. Is that am I correct, Dr. Dentley?
Real close. I'm in Will County, but it's right outside of Cook County. Absolutely.
Oh, okay. Okay. Now, you're going to have to explain to me where are
his complete bio
let me
is
see.
here.
I'm going to read this because it's fascinating. A knight, Grand Prior of Illinois, and Baron of the House of Cappadocia, Constantine the Great, Saint Helen. Now, give us a little insight into these titles, Doctor.
I feel like we are in London in the.
Well, we're not in London, but he's about to explain.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on the show. I've got a chance to look at some of your shows before and previous to this show, and you're really doing some phenomenal things, bringing awareness and information and enlightening people that you care about, that people care about the topics that you bring, because they're very important for us to be informed with integrity. So I thank you for having me, first of all. Okay. I am a knight of the Royal House of Cappadocia, Constantine the Great, and St. Helen. I was knighted about 2 years ago by Prince Raphael, who is a direct blood descendant of Constantine the Great. And Constantine the Great is the ruler of Rome who first brought Christianity as the religion of Rome, and he eliminated persecution of Christians in Rome. And he's known for a lot of battles, but they were primarily about protecting and honoring Christians or people who want to have the right to serve in their religion in the way that they chose. And that's where it pretty much comes from. Grand Prior, which means I'm also like the governor of Illinois. as to date, in this order that started at 324 AD. It's the oldest royal order in the world when they used to own England, actually. And I am the only Grand Prior in the United States until next week. And next week, I also will be officially, globally, a Baron of St. James of Cappadocia.
That is just amazing. And I know that, for example, Constantine did build a lot of churches in the Roman Empire, right? And in fact, I had an opportunity to tour Israel, and part of that tour took me on a trip to not only the Palestinian territory, but Jerusalem, and saw some of the grand structures built by Constantine at the time. So those are impressive titles, Professor. I'm going to refer to you rather than sir, because I feel like I'm in the military if I call. I'm going to refer to you as doctor or, or professor. You've also earned your PhD. You have too many titles and too many honors for us to spend our time going over, but we're just delighted to have you, and particularly on a very important issue. Now, I'm going to take a moment just to give you some background. We live in Houston, Texas, which is Harris County. Harris County is the third largest county in the United States. And like many large urban areas, Professor, that you're aware of, we have a serious homeless problem. But the population that we call homeless euphemistically is not really the bulk of them are not people that are in a transitory situation where they've lost their job and they don't have a house until they get another job and pay rent and get a roof over their head. They tend to be folks with mental health issues and substance abuse issues. Is that, my first question to you, is that generally the case in the United States, where most people on the streets are either suffering from a substance abuse or a severe mental health trauma?
Yes, I would absolutely agree with that. The cause of it, there's a lot of different ways to look at it, but I want you to know that I did live in Houston, Texas, Dallas, Midland, Odessa, and Abilene. So I'm very familiar with the
Well, our
area.
apologies for someone sending you to Midland, Texas, and Odessa.
So when I went there, they said, "Why are they sending you there?" I used to manage a restaurant in 1980 called Steak and Ale
Oh, yeah.
in Humble, Houston as well. And when they sent me to Midland, Odessa, they said, "What did you do?" I said, "I just got in the company." They said, "Why are you going to Midland, Odessa?" I said, "What's wrong with that?" They said, "There's no black people there." I said, "There will be." I had the most wonderful time in Midland, Odessa. So you
Will
can't talk
be.
about
Well,
love
let me tell
Midland,
you
Odessa.
that I got to tell you, that reminds me of my Air Force experience. When I was 18, there was commercials run that says, "Join the Air Force, see the world." So out of Houston, Texas, I enlisted in the United States Air Force. My first duty station was San Antonio. My
Yeah.
second duty station, which you'll be familiar with, was at outside of Champaign-Urbana, Illinois, at Rantoul Air Force Base, which does not exist anymore.
You got me at Champagne.
And my third duty station, Professor, I got to travel, see the world, was Del Rio, Texas. So,
Nice.
yeah, what did we do to, deserve those duty stations? So, Dr. Bentley, again, the question was, the bulk of the homeless population either has a drug dependency issue or a mental health issue. Is that right or wrong?
I would say absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And it comes from so many different places, but it really kind of stems from the paradigm that we have, the way that we see the world, and how our response mechanism triggers us to act upon what this different situations that we're faced with. It really begins there. I think sometimes our brain has betrayed us because in school we're taught many things, but we never were taught about ourselves. So with PTSD, and that's another angle as well, because from war, even being in a police officer, or even being in some areas where you're raised, or the situations that you face when you're raised, all these things impact you because what you live, you learn, and what you learn, you practice, and what you practice, you become. But the homelessness and drug is a symptom of something. Drugs, people want to escape a feeling, or they want to feel different. But it started someplace else. The root of that is beyond the drug, before the drug.
So again, I was talking earlier. I live in, as you know, Houston, Texas, and Unfortunately, the mental health challenges are, if you don't have private health insurance, which a lot of folks on the streets don't, are taken care of by our public health system, which is Harris Health. And we don't have enough beds. And so what's happening to the folks that are homeless and suffering from mental health issues, they end up getting arrested on the streets for petty violations of the criminal code, and the jail is becoming sort of the warehouse for those suffering from mental health issues. And I started doing some ancillary research because I've always been fascinated by this. At some point, our society, our government, decided to deinstitutionalize those folks that who were in severe need of some intervention by the state. Either they went through a hearing and were declared mentally incompetent, or were committed to an institution that would provide some health care to them. We don't have that much anymore, do we? We just leave them on the streets.
Yeah, it's really interesting because we always deal with the effect and not the root cause of
Right.
most things. And the effect is what we see today and the things that you're illustrating and communicating right now. The root cause is that where did it come from as a human being? And to understand that, think about it like this. If you go into a classroom, you have one teacher who teaches the exact same lesson to 25 students. And when she gives them a test, some people get an A, some a B, B minus, C, D, and say maybe one or two may fail it. And then they can go and they can study the test and go over it and retest, and you'll see the grades move slightly up, but you still see the same disconnection, but there was only one lesson taught. And that's why I specialize and invest my life into high levels of communication to really understand how we communicate and what communication really is, because it's not just what's coming out of your mouth. Everything in the world, even on a cellular level, communicates. And when you know how to tie those things together, you can start looking at an individual and find out what is causing the issue, and then are they willing to address it.
So here in your bio that you sent us, you said you're a bestseller author, philanthropic, and one of the nation's top life and mental breakthrough strategists. He is your dynamic personality with over 30 years of training in areas identify the symptoms of depression, negative behaviors. So I wanted you to talk about your experience during these 30 years and put
Yeah.
us in a perspective of this illness, the depression, and all of this thing that is happening right now before
Yeah.
30 years ago, and what is costing what we're seeing these days in the world.
Okay. You have a chemical imbalance, and then you have a mental and an emotional imbalance. But however, the emotional imbalance can cause a chemical imbalance. It can even be tied to what you're eating, but that goes back to the emotional imbalance of how you're feeling based upon what you're eating. How are you perceiving the world? How is your paradigm set? And it really stems from, as in the theta stage of your life, when you're in a mother's womb, um, our communication is all vibrations. It's all vibrations. Loud noises, loud songs, soft music, loving talk, love talk, soft, beautiful music of love and support. They mean a lot when you're born. But when a baby is born, they have to learn a lot of things in a short amount of time because nobody teaches us how to use this. We have to do it through observation, and that's the way we communicate still by the vibration. So when you start there and you look at a person, how they were raised, well, it's also true that two people can be raised in the exact same situation and have two different outcomes and responses. So it's how they are interpreting what is happening to you. If you interpret something as a stepping stone to learn and grow, then it can make you better. If you interpret it as something that's meant to hurt or harm you, then you can either fight against it or you have feelings of doubt, feelings of lack of worthiness, feeling of a lack of love and a lack of control, and then you begin to spin. And when human beings spin, we can burn the house down because we're seeking something. Look at me, because the greatest human need is one of significance. Does my life really count? Do I matter? Now, outside of that, traumatic experiences and can put you in situations when triggered that you can have an emotional breakdown and an emotional response because you just can't take it anymore. Who am I? We search for something that's already inside of us, but we look for it outside, and that's why communication is so important.
So, quick question, because you look like a very young man. You're probably much younger than I am, so I'll relate my story. When I grew up in Texas, I tell people all the time, and I want to again bring it back to what Andrea was talking about, which is what we're seeing uh, with the shootings in this country. When I grew up in the 70s, late 70s, I had a pickup truck. We had a gun rack. We actually drove around with shotguns and 30 rifles. People didn't walk into the school and start shooting. What's happened? Where's the disconnect? Why has society in the last 40 years, 50 years, gone from kids carrying BB guns and shotguns and rifles to actually going into the classroom and public spaces and decimating folks?
Yeah. Well, I tell you, we have something we have to answer in this country, and that's who do we really want to be? On one hand, we have social media, we have a 24-hour news cycle. When we grew up, there were basically 3 or 4 channels on television, and then it went off, and you had to be there with yourself and find different ways to occupy your mind. Now our mind is being fed with so much data so quickly that when people wake up, they go straight to social media. And social media, we look for status. We celebrate people who have more likes, so we seek more likes. It means we have more friends, we have more influence. More influence gives us a perception of having more power. So when you look at our society in general, and you combine that with the access to more weapons, then you're going to have more mass shootings. Before we had weapons, people fought, and we celebrated people in the boxing arena and the martial arts years with Bruce Lee. Everybody wanted to be a karate artist, and you would fight in the street with your hands if you had conflict. Now a person can feel emboldened because they can pick up that gun, and we're desensitized to it because we don't value ourselves. Another challenge of it is that right now we live in an era, and we went through many years of this, where the average household didn't make enough income as inflation took their bills upward and took their expenses upward. The income didn't rise with it. So now you're having people work 1 or 2 jobs, which cause a breakdown inside of the home, a sense of not being good enough as a parent, and then resentment. And I'll tell you a quick story. I coached a young lady many years ago, and she resented her mother and father because she said no one was ever there for her. Well, when I went into her story, her father passed away and died when she was a baby. So he wasn't there. And the mother had to work 2 jobs to support her, and she wasn't there. But inside of that child, who's going to help me? And she had resentment and didn't even understand she had it. And when you have that resentment, you have a human defense mechanism that'll kick in to save you, whether you deflect it, whether you want to blame it on someone else, whether you want to use humor to get rid of it, whether you want to be nonchalant, whether you want to be angry or put someone on punishment for it. It has to come in to protect you and your perception of to keep you alive, keep you well, to thrive, to prove that you're good enough. Instead of us really kind of understanding that everyone's good enough. Look how beautifully and wonderfully made we all are. DNA from mom, DNA from dad, 90% water, no bones, no eyeballs, no cartilage. And look what you have become, just like an acorn is an oak tree or a seed becomes a rose. And if we understand who we are and where we come from and the miracle of us, everything we seek is already within us because life is always seeking fulfillment. But in human beings, if we don't get what we think we want, we go into depression and feel like we're not good enough. And to think of things to prove or proves, we're acted out and we're proved we're not good enough, or we're proved that we can do it.
One of the questions, Dr. Bentley, uh, is social media was created, at least, the founders tell us this, to bring the world together, right? To exchange ideas, to share pictures, to share activities.
Connect family, connect
Yeah,
friends,
it's supposed to
colleagues.
connect. What
Yeah.
has happened is that I think diametrically opposed to the vision that some of these folks had thought when uh, AOL, MySpace, and all those early platforms came up, and so is social media really bringing us closer together, or is it tearing us apart? What's your view on that one?
It's highlighting what's already here. It's expanding it. Nothing in technology is neither good or bad. It's all about how you use it. You can use social media to bring people together in a loving way to support one another. People have a chat. I know a friend of mine, and their son had their apartment burned out, and they lost everything. And they got with the go on social media with a GoFundMe, and they were able to sustain because most people are really good. There's good in their hearts. They'll so it's almost think of it like this. Social media just highlights what's even there. So, but we're very tribal. But in the core of the human existence, think of it like this. Have you ever seen someone in their car stop and they got out the car, they put their shoulder to the wheel, the door's open, they have their hand on the steering wheel, and they're pushing their car? You've seen that, correct?
Right.
Now, in almost every occasion, if they're pushing the car, somebody else is going to pull over and help them. But if they're just sitting there mumbling, someone may slow down and say, "Are you okay?" And they're going to keep going. So you have to participate in your own rescue. Social media can highlight those stories or it can glorify, because just like there's a car accident, everybody slows down in traffic to see the tragedy. Okay. That's part of the human DNA. Okay. So now when you take that and you have someone who already has some trauma, because PTSD is just not for people in war. A police officer that has to go out every single day with a bulletproof vest on and has to have a gun and kick in doors, they're already setting up in their mind of the situations of what can happen. So they're already built in there, and they can get a trigger after hearing flashbangs and things and seeing things that most of us would never see on a crime scene. They have to live with that, and then they hit a trigger point, or they've been in war and now they're in the police force, and they hit a trigger point from something they saw when they were in armed services. And we never addressed those things. A child who's been abused has a trigger point of whether they can adhere to that, like Stockholm syndrome, adhere to their captive, whether it be emotional or it be a person, or they rebel against it. And I think that in communication, we have to learn how to speak not just into the listening, but into the life force, into the cellular structure, into the the emotions of another person, to be able to touch them and speak to them, and then ask them questions and pull it out, because everyone just wants to say, "See me, I'm important. I deserve to be loved. I want more. I want who? How do I count?" Everybody wants that. Now, there's certain people that are totally lost in the message, but that also came from someplace. There's a root somewhere, and we have to address that root. And it may not happen. It won't happen overnight, but we can make headway. And I love what I do because I'm able to come out of there with stories of people who have been in the darkness and come to light, as I've done it myself in my own life.
I have a so there are competing factors on now that you talk about people wake up in the mornings and the first thing they do before they shower or shave or brush their teeth is go right to the laptop and see how many likes they got
Yeah.
on Facebook, or how many responses or retweets that they got, or how many views on Instagram. Um, and that's fine. There's all kinds of addictions, but there's also, you talk about communication. We know that external forces are also in social media trying to divide the society. Um,
Mhm.
One of the fascinating issues is how they tried to divide us in this country by race. I grew up in the 60s. I saw the civil rights struggle. I have studied, the issue of slavery, and the consequences thereof. I mean, I try to have an understanding of what my fellow American, fellow human being has had to go through, and the multi-generational and traumatic effects of that. Uh, but yet, the external forces are putting fake news, this is where the term comes from, into the society to rip us apart. You got the Proud Boys, and you got the BLM people, and you got the guys hooded, in white hoods from the South, and, it's crazy. And why doesn't a voice of reason like yours get through the din? Why doesn't a compassionate, loving message that we're all in this together as human beings? You talk about the beauty of, two little cells of mostly 80% water getting together with no cartilage or bones or any tissue, and bloom, here comes, Dr. Dentley and Orlando Sanchez out of that two little cells.
Yeah.
Why doesn't that message get through?
Well, it's just not highlighted. Years ago, in the '80s, I was in Lexington, Kentucky, for training, and there was 22 of us at Transylvania University, and I was the only African American, the only black person there. We had a wonderful time. I came out second in my class, and the last day there was a young white fella that came up to me, and we had never really spoken, and he came to me and said, "May I have breakfast with you tomorrow?" And I said, "Sure." We sat down, and he said, "I want to." He was younger than I was. I was in my 20s. He was even younger than me. But I said, "I want to apologize." I said, "Why?" He said, "Because all of my life I've been a racist." He said, "My father's been a racist. My grandfather's a racist. But I've never met a black person. And you're nothing like they told me you would be." And I just said, "Well, thank you." And we stayed in contact for 20 years.
Wow.
Because, again, what you live, you learn. What you learn, you practice. What you practice, you become. If we were all born in India, 70% of us would be Hindu. How about that?
Great.
See, so it stems from, we're tribal, and it's okay. But I think the problem is not the different perspectives of what's important, because in the Latino culture, you have a heritage there that's extremely important. In African American culture, there's a heritage there. The problem is that nobody knows where they come from in America because of the way they came to America. Okay, that's the biggest issue there. But that's happened years ago, and they keep putting salt into that wound, or keep that
Yeah.
crack there. Yeah,
Yeah.
they keep intentionally.
Okay,
Yeah.
real quick, because then I'm gonna be quiet because my amiga here thinks I take over the show.
No,
But
I want to bring
a
our
quick
second guest
question
too.
for you,
No?
Professor.
Yeah.
How do you reconcile a constitutional democracy like the United States with our tribalism? In other
Yeah.
words, so we tend to be, and I experienced this when I was in the Air Force. I went to the chow hall, and my African American friends were over at this table, my Hispanic friends were over there, and then you had a bunch of white guys, and there weren't many Asians, but even, so I understand this tribalism, but how do we bring us together? How do we recognize that we may be, because the beauty of America is that we don't have a national religion, right? We don't have a state sponsored religion, so we have
Yeah.
Muslims and we have atheists and we have Christians and we have Hindus and we have Buddhists and we have,
Yeah.
Druids, whatever you want to call them. How do you reconcile that? How do you make that society work?
I love it. Love leads the way. Okay. The Bible says one body, many members. You have your fingers. You can open up a jar with your fingers, but you cannot open up that jar with your knees. You cannot open up that jar with your ankles. They're totally separate and totally different, with different functions and different identities. They don't even hang out together, but they're all part of a whole, and they cannot escape one another. And once we understand that, and we start looking for the good of people, because at the end of the day, all of us really want the same things. We just have different ideas about how we get there. And the problem comes in when you try to force the way of your life on someone else if they're not forcing back for you to change their life. That's what freedom. See, my knees, when I had to have a knee replacement, it did nothing to my hand. My hand was not impacted by that, but it's still part of the same body, the same country as my hand is my knee and my toes. They all do different things. They look different. The bottom of my feet are the same color as your face. You can't escape. So when you come to that, it's not really about the differences. It's that people, in society, we create the tribe. So, and then we look at it though, if you are progressing, then it took it from me, because you are a mirror. And when I look at you, I see what I feel that I am not. So it's not even personal. And that's why mental health is so important. We don't even know why we think the way we think and why
Mm-hmm.
we act and feel those ways. And that's what we have to get back to. And it's really simple, but they hide the most significant things in the simplest places.
So, Dr. Danley, how do you
Mhm.
feel that the country and the society it's taking mental health. Are
Yeah.
we doing enough? What it needs to be done?
Yeah.
How do you see?
Hmm. I see that we have a lot. I feel that all politicians should have term limits, even Supreme Court. I think they should, because every society is shifts. If you think about the way when you were young, people thought you were crazy. Your parents and grandparents, it was they loved you, but it was a difference. Just like the movie Flashdance, no dancing in our town. As society grows, new ideas come that fit that society and fit the area we in with social media. So when I look at what the country is doing, no, they're not doing enough, but I think we're doing too many of the wrong things. And I think we have too many people that I won't say I won't even speak to corruption. That's not my department. I will speak to that our ideals are not part of the solution. We're just trying to be right and not trying to be effective and be impactful. And that's what we have to change. So no, we have to do more.
So you think that Mitch McConnell and Joe Biden collectively serving 100 years in public office is not a good thing?
Well, not well. I'll say this. I don't really no. I don't say that at all. I
Oh,
say they need to have
okay.
term limits, but they can also be on the advisory part of it because
Yeah,
I think that there's genius in these two individuals that they understand how to navigate things that beyond our understanding. But the reason that they're significant is because they've been in a body so long, so they know how
yeah,
to connect the dots with someone who's been there for 50 years and somebody's been there for two. But if
right.
everybody was there for six, the dynamic would have to change.
Yeah. No, I don't disagree. I was just pointing out that the two of them together. I mean, if you add up the leadership in this country, both
Yeah,
sides of the aisle, it's
yeah,
centuries. I mean, Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell and Joe Biden and John Kerry. I mean, that's
yeah.
200 years of public
Well,
service. I
yeah,
mean, it's like
yeah,
holy cow.
yeah. But
But
you know what?
anyway.
Okay, so our other guests couldn't
Couldn't
figure it out
connect.
that
Yeah.
the technology. So, Dr. Danley, I wanted you give us the what I call the call to action. What we need to
Yeah,
do as a society, because one thing is in the political level they do, the programs that they create or the programs that they enforce, but
yeah.
as a society, because to me everything comes with the family. If we don't have a strong base in our families, it doesn't matter what organizations or the politicians can do if we need to work inside.
Yeah, Dr.
Yeah.
Dentley, if you had your genie and they said, Dr. Dentley, how do you fix society? I mean, what would be your top three wishes? What would you like to see from a public policy perspective? How can we improve the society? How can we improve mental health in this country?
I'll start with four pillars. First of all, awakening. Awaken that everything you ever need is inside of you, especially in this country, to achieve, no matter what your situation is, achieve the goals and dreams you aspire to achieve. The challenge is that we have two problems. Most people don't know what they really want and they don't know how to get it. And if you go to a drive through in McDonald's and you pull up and they say, "Welcome to McDonald's, may I help you?" Why do we have to process and think about what we want to order when they've had the same menu from the day you were alive? They've added three things, right? So,
Right.
first of all, we don't know what we want. We have to get clarity on what we want and be awakened that we have access to it. And this can be proven because everything that exists in the world, once upon a time, never existed. You look around the room and everything you see, once upon a time, it wasn't here. However, everything needed to create it was always here. So you awaken, first of all, that there's more for you, there's a bigger possibility, and more for your life. You are what you say you are, who you say you are, good or bad. So what are you saying? What are you communicating to you and reinforcing yourself? Number one. Number two, awareness. Awareness means there's more. That you can, there's a gift inside of every human being that you can take that gift and create value for society and monetize that and serve with that. So awaken and then awareness and then attraction. You see, you people seek like somebody seeks us. I want a good mate, but they pass by all the people that can be really good for them. They can't see it. It's
Boy,
just
I
almost
know
like
that.
I love it. I love your show. But then last is agreement. In order to succeed in any area, it's about who you're in relationship with. You must be in agreement. You have to have people around you that support or in agreement with your goals and dreams and visions, and you're in agreement with theirs. That's the way it works. Even on a cellular level, if you're not in agreement on a cellular level, your heart stops beating when you sleep. If your heart has an argument with the arteries, we have a problem. They have to always be in agreement. In a relationship with your children, with your spouse, with your significant other, in your on your job, in your company, you have to be in agreement. That's why they create core values. They got mantras that what do we stand for? Who are we? And what can we agreement with? I remember when I was young, and most people don't have to agree with this, but every day when I went to school, we put our hand over our heart and we had to pledge allegiance to the flag. And they just told us to do it, and we did it. And for that one moment at 9 a.m. to 9:02, everyone was in agreement about the country. Today, people are being raised to hate their country, and other countries don't do that. They may not like the society or the leadership, but we're being raised, we're teaching our kids to hate the country. And that's ridiculous. It's almost
Yeah.
like taking the trash and throwing it in your kitchen floor every day.
Yeah, I grew up in that same era, Professor. I came here in the 1960s, started public school, and every morning we said the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we said the Lord's Prayer. Now,
Yeah.
I understand that it may run against the Constitution to force a young Muslim or a Buddhist or an atheist to say the Lord's Prayer.
Yeah.
I'm fine with that. But we
Mhm.
remove that spiritual moment. In other words, perhaps a moment of silence to reflect on whatever, either the
Yeah.
daisies outside, the wildflowers, the rainbow, or if you're a
Mhm.
believer in Christianity, Jesus Christ and your
Mhm.
Savior, whatever you want to do that moment.
Yeah.
But we've
Mhm.
removed that. And you just said something very important, that we all have to have this relationship. And how important is a spiritual relationship to whatever
Yeah.
the greater power is? What role does that play in the human's life?
Well, first of all, we are spirit, first and foremost. Energy and frequency is everything. It precedes every single thing. And you can measure it. There are electrical circuits inside of our body. Someone can stare at you in a mall and you can feel the energy of someone staring at you. You can feel, you can go up to a friend of yours. You can, with each other as co-hosts, if something's wrong with Andrea. She comes in, she doesn't have to say anything. Andrea, what's the matter? Or if she's hiding something, like something exciting's happening. Andrea, what's going on? You'll feel that if
First
you're
of
in
all, she
tune.
doesn't hide a darn thing. I mean, this is like emotion on the sleeve. But go ahead.
Well,
She's
which
Colombian.
which is good, I guess.
It is very good.
Yeah.
Most people try not to feel. It's important to learn how to feel and embrace it, no matter what it is, and define it. See, I control what things mean to me. If it's happening inside of me, I should be in control of that. I'm not in control of what happens to you. I'm in control of what happens inside of me. And if I get that, nobody teaches us how to think, how to use this brain. It's
Yeah.
because it comes down to how you feel, what you say, and what you do. But it starts with how you feel, and what does that feeling do? It makes you greater, more impactful, or it takes you and makes you hide underneath the shadows of the expressway.
And I think we need to work a lot in not only in our own home, but also in the classroom, emotional intelligence. We are not teaching our kids emotional intelligence, and that's
Yeah.
something that is very important. I remember when I was looking for a elementary school for my kids. My kids graduating in a private school, and I went to different private schools. And something that it stick in my head in one of the school particular that I went, I didn't put them there, but the person that it was giving us the tour, it was emphasizing constantly emotional intelligence, and he was saying, here at this school we teach your kids education, a standard education, but something that
Mhm.
is very important for us is emotional intelligence, because that's gonna take them farther than just the traditional education. So I think
Yeah.
that's something that as a society and parents and friends and just work on emotional intelligence is something that it's a lack on this society.
Yeah, I think that we try to operate. If you had anything that you purchased and would you operate it and then read the manual 3 weeks later after it doesn't work properly? Because if you want to teach, you want to put things in here, but you don't want to study how this works. We know the information we want to impart in you. And we have a challenge today, even more so, because they're teaching the exact same thing they taught us 30 or 40 years ago, 50 years ago, 60 years. They're teaching the same thing. We live in a world where you can go now and pick up your phone and get so much data faster, quicker, and your kids are bored to death. They don't have an identity, a sense of who they are being there. And if you're
Mm-hmm.
smart, you get the code to put your hand down. And if you raise your hand up and you get the information wrong, the answer wrong, then they make you feel, if the teacher doesn't make you feel bad, the students will. Then they'll call you a dummy or something like that. And these identities, because now we become an outcast because we don't fit, because we're not encouraged to. And then how
Yeah.
do we, both of you people, both of you individuals have a gift that are working in harmony. That's why you're here. That's the only reason you can be here. Inside of that gift, there's things to do even greater, even greater. But at least you found what you love to do and what you're good at, and you're impactful and purposeful in it. And if you treat a child as they are, they may remain the same. But if you can treat them as they could be, watch them grow in what they should be. That's it.
Wow. Listen, Sir Dr. James Dentley III.
Your Highness,
we have
thank
had
you so much.
we have had great guests, but we have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. And one question I have of you: when there is discord here, as there often is in this studio, would you mind if we call you for an intervention?
Look, we can have a good laugh together and have a glass of wine in your hand and have a good laugh together.
Well,
Can I
good.
end with
Absolutely.
one
Well,
thing?
next time you're in Texas, let us know, and
Please.
Andrea will provide you and me a bottle of 1962 Chateau Margaux, which I
Oh,
look forward to sharing with you.
cheers
Love
for
it.
that.
Love it. Can I end with one thing for you and your audience? It stems from, first of all, imagination to create the life you want to live. You have to have a dream to make a dream come true, and put it and make it a picture, put it in front of you, and just follow your dreams wherever they may lead. And never ever get distracted from a less worthy deed. Remember to shelter them and nourish them and help them to grow. Let your heart hold them down deep where dreams go. Just follow your dreams. You pursue them with haste. Remember and never forget, your life is too precious and it's too fleeting to waste. So be faithful and be loyal. Then all your days through, the dreams that you follow will always come true. Create the life you want to live.
Oh my
Thank you.
God, amen.
Dr.
I love
Dentley,
it.
thank you very much. God bless you.
Thank you
Appreciate your
so
time
much.
and dedicating an hour of your time to sharing it with our viewers. We look forward to having you again, so I hope that you'll come back.
Oh, anytime. I love this. I love what I get to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, well,
And another great show.
another great
Can you give me
program.
more compliments?
Well, just a big high five, and we're. I guess we didn't have Dr. Cooper hook up, but she will come back someday.
Yeah, that happened. Technical problems.
Technical problems. But no, I mean, I think Dr. Dentley is just a fascinating human being, and I look forward to reading some of his books.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. When I met him this early this week, I was like, I need to have him on the show,
Yeah.
and especially when he told me about mental health and all the work that he's been doing. I said, you know what? This is something that is really the pandemic these days in our society, mental health, and we need to, talk about that.
Yeah, no, he's fascinating, and it was a great program. All right, and we've got another show planned for next week. I don't know what you'll have up your sleeve, but I'm sure it'll be
Amazing.
an amazing.
I'm getting
program.
better and better.
All right, and settle down now. Settle down. It's like,
Okay, as a team, we're getting better and better.
all right, thanks for tuning in. Appreciate Dr. Dentley joining us again. Texas Latino Conservatives. Visit our website. TexasLatinoConservatives.com. Remember, we have an upcoming Leadership Latino class, which is free to attend if you want to run for public office and serve your community, but know little to nothing about the political process. We'll get you trained up to be an excellent candidate. Well, we have several of our graduates are now holding public office around the state of Texas, and we want to make sure that you're the next leader in the state of Texas, and we will make your dreams come true, as Dr. Dentley said. Always have your dreams in front of you, and we want to be a small parcel of achieving that dream. So sign up for Leadership Latino coming up in August. Also, if you want to help our cause in Texas, electing young Hispanic conservatives across the state of Texas, any candidate that's conservative, because we've helped all kinds of candidates.
Yep.
I mean, whether they're African American or whether they're Asian or whether they're women or whether they're Latino,
With just
we help them all.
conservative values.
But we are mostly focused on increasing Hispanic participation and elevating our Hispanic conservative leaders in the state of Texas. Make a donation to Texas Latino Conservatives. There's a donate tab on our webpage. And Andrea, you get the last word.
Nos vemos el próximo miércoles. Chao, chao y gracias por acompañarnos.